they always have like a big, what do you want to call it, sort of a fair for the poor, needy people. They give turkeys out, and they were giving flu shots and various things. And so they invited me to come and be in an area if anybody needed prayer. And we were teamed up with various partners, and that's how I met this lovely lady by the name of Blaga. And we sat and talked, and Blaga is from Bulgaria, and she began to tell me what it was like to be raised as a Christian under communism, and what she has seen in this country, some things that frighten her, about what is happening in the United States of America. You know, it's interesting because when you talk with people from other countries, my sister teaches piano lessons, and she has a beautiful woman from Russia. And that woman was saying, again, a Christian under communism, and she said how she was so excited to come to the United States because she and her husband had heard of what a great Christian nation we were. And she found out differently when she entered university that we are not the Christian country we once were known to be. Blaga and her husband Ivan here, they have been in this country since 2009. Blaga and Ivan have 3 beautiful daughters, 1 set of twins and a third daughter, and they have 5 grandchildren. I said, she doesn't look, she's a young-looking grandmother. Yep. And just a little earlier, Blaga said she wanted to be cautious about not offending anybody with whatever she's going to share today. But I said, do not worry about offending anybody, because sometimes the truth is offensive. And you know, I just am not going to worry either about people being offended if I'm sharing the truth. You might be offended by something I said about Rabbi there a minute ago, but I don't worry about that either. So, and believe me, he doesn't worry when he's insulting me. So, let's give a nice 4 Seasons welcome to Blaga Popova. Now, I want to also explain, people, we're not a huge congregation, but we have the Pops, the Popoviches, and the Popova. Anyway, three families whose names start with Pop. I love it. Once again, give her a nice warm welcome.
Thank you so much. And the root word is not pop, it's popov, which is come from priest, because somebody, I believe in all of our families, was a priest. Anyway. Thank you so much for inviting me here, and for the beautiful, beautiful worship. I have to tell you that I cannot remember last time when I enjoyed the worship like this morning. Praise God. Really touched my heart. Really nice. We still have to sing the old hymn and all the worship songs that we know. Pastor Bill introduced me a little bit, and during the conversation during this event, I shared with him that I'm going to speak to our high schoolers. I'm working for the Mountain View Christian School, and I said, you know, that they were in the middle of studying about the Marxism, the communism, and so on. And they invited me to share my testimony, and I didn't tell you that it didn't went well. Most of the young people didn't even care about that. And that's why I'm really glad that I can be here this morning and share with you a little stories, or the story of my family and the life during the communism. Unfortunately, it's not over. No. I was thinking 20, 30 years ago that it's over, but obviously it's not over. Anyway, I'm from Bulgaria. Bulgaria is a small country on the Balkans, just above Greece. And for 50 years we were under the communist regime. But before that, we gave something else to the world. In 865, two Bulgarian brothers, they gave the Slavic alphabet because their desire was to translate the Bible into the native language. And since then we have the Slavic alphabet and the Slavic languages. Today, actually the Cyrillic. The Cyrillic alphabet is used by Bulgarians, Serbians, Russians, Macedonians, and Mongolians. The other thing that Bulgaria is famous with is the yogurt. If you don't know, the yogurt is from Bulgaria. When you go home, you can look at the back of any yogurt and you see the bacteria is even named after us Bulgaricus. We're famous.
All this time we've been thanking the Greeks.
This is another propaganda advice. Yes, and the feta cheese, right? If you think that the feta cheese is Greek, no. We have this all of the countries on the Balkans because we lived under the Turkish for 500 years, and we all pretend that whatever dish is, it's Bulgarian, Romanian, Serbian, whatever, but actually, or Greek, of course, Greeks. I forgot Greeks. They're so important. Anyway, Bulgaria is a small country with the size of the state of Ohio, with 7 million people, and traditionally Bulgarians are Orthodox. Orthodox means, they call themselves Orthodox, but actually they have like 2, 3, 4, I cannot even remember, 4 reasons to go to church, when somebody dies, when somebody gets married, for baptism, and it's very, very traditional beliefs. I don't think even it's beliefs, But, and this is the country. Very small and very nice, by the way. The other thing that from history we're famous with is that we're the only nation that saved our Jewish during the Nazi. We didn't send any Jewish to the concentration camp. This is one thing for us, for Bulgarians. Why we're talking about the communism so many years later? Because, the liberal Democrats are working tirelessly to convert us to the socialist country. And when I say communist, socialist, progressive, liberal, they're same with a different variation, but in the end, they have the same roots. And as I told you, nobody is telling students anymore how dangerous socialism is. For some of you who grew up during the Cold War, with the drills, under the desk, protecting from the nuclear attack or something, you know how you're taught that the communism is evil, which is exactly the truth. The communism, the socialism, they're absolutely evil. But today at schools, and especially the universities, the left professors, liberal professors, spending their time teaching our younger generation that capitalism is evil and that the communism needs to be given another chance. In spite of the fact that the communism has failed in the Soviet Union, but still enslaved Cuba, North Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and so many countries. The communism is implementation of socialism. Communism and socialism are the same root, the same philosophy, with the difference being that the communism is a more extreme version of the socialism. Communism denies private ownership of land and demands of the production. In other words, that the communism, the government owns the farms and factories, virtually, actually all businesses. Socialism, however, takes individual money and property more through taxes, as well as the government bailout. all of the programs. At the heart of the socialism is the belief that government, specifically the socialist government, is the key for the human salvation. And there is a story that one day the capitalism, socialism, and communism have a meeting for tea at noon.
For tea.
Capitalism and communism arrive at time, but socialism is nowhere to be found. Finally, he arrives out of breath and apologetic. "I'm sorry, so sorry," he said. "I was standing on line for sausages." And then the capitalism asked, "What is the line?" And the socialism, what is the sausage? It was reality for us. The socialism was popularized by German philosopher Karl Marx in the 19th century. Marx believed that all evils of society, crime, unemployment, poverty, all a result of the class envy brought on by capitalism. In Marx's mind, it was the struggle that haves against the have-nots that caused all the society's evil. And he believed that when people are equal, economically equal, then the perfect utopia will be created. Thieves would not longer steal. People are going to, the criminals will reform themselves, and cruel criminals will have the empathy, and suddenly they will be so nice, and only if only socialism can be implanted. And Karl Marx was thinking that everything will be through evolution, like normally take over the world, but in Russia, they were thinking differently, and Lenin actually, forcefully, by the military force, took the country. And how much force was needed for Lenin's regime to implement communism? 20 million innocent civilians had to die. Freedom debt as well. In Soviet Union, you can only live and work where the government told you. Millions tried to leave their home country in order to escape the regime. To stop this exodus, they built the Iron Curtain and the Berlin Wall and machine gun anyone trying to leave the country. And this is the communist utopia. I live in this time. I was raised in a family, and I will share with you a little bit later about my family. And we experienced enormous persecution during that time. And we are building walls to prevent people to come to this country, and they built the walls to prevent people to go out. You know, for us, now it's such a miracle that I can stand in the front of you. And in the United States, you know, when I grew up, it was absolutely impossible even to think that I can go close to the border. And again, why we're talking all about this today? I want to share with you some specific goals that the communists seek to achieve to bring down America. And this is from the book called The Naked Communist. The author is the Cleon Skousen, and this book is from 1962. Oh. And I mean, he has like 45 specific goals. I'm going to share some with you, and you will tell me if they achieved some of their goals or they didn't. But remember, it was 1962. And I want to apologize if I am going to offend some of you, but they're facts. And I have to say that not everybody who supports these goals is a communist, but they're the socialist communist goals. Let's start with the first one. Get control of the schools, use them as transmission belt for socialism, encourage communist propaganda, soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' association, put the parking line in textbook. How successful have communists in their whole travel been?
Good.
Right? Do schools teach revolution? Yes. And they're leading students to believe that this is true. They're not telling them anything else about that. Do the schools eliminate God, prayer, worship?
Yes.
And of course the Bible. Grove City College political science professor Kenger described an alarming interaction he had with one of his students. He said, "He told me of the elite Christian private school he attended, where the newly hired teacher, fresh out of the major university, told the students he was the Christian communist. And that anyone who is a Christian should be a communist." Our students led to believe all of this, and we don't have time to talk about, but the social gospel, you know, like the movement here is so popular today, it's the same. It's dangerous too. Next one. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all form of artistic impression. Our plan is to promote ugliness, meaningless art.
Oh, yeah.
I have to tell you, I don't know you, but I have to tell you that I cannot watch any movies anymore. I used to like to watch the shows. I cannot now, because the Holy Spirit inside me is telling me that I cannot do this, and I'm paying for the cable only to watch Fox News.
Yeah.
Or some old shows, right? All of the, and what about the music that the kids are listening today? It's terrible. Violence, the language, and even the Disney movies. We don't have time now to talk about the entertainment, but I just heard the new Disney movie, I can't remember the name, that Oprah is the producer.
Wrinkle in Time.
Yes. They said that the movie is absolutely against Christians.
Yeah.
Or movies like Brave, you know, like now with my 5 grandchildren, I'm watching time to time. The cartoons and oh my, it's so dangerous, you know, like all of these ideas, Ice Age with the global warming stuff, and then absolutely inappropriate language. Yes? I just heard this, you know, like, oh, we're going to be rewarded with naked bingo or something like that. You know, like, you as parents and grandparents, you have to be very careful what you let your kids watch. Because in the form of something good, this is exactly how Satan works. In this form, things are changing. Okay, eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and violation of free speech and free press. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. Next one. Present homosexuality as a normal, natural, and healthy. Remember that this was written in 1962.
Wow.
Who then would have expected gay, lesbian, free love, and even homosexual marriage? But now we have them, and along with all of the easy divorces, abortions, and all of the disease, including AIDS, and they all present them like something absolutely normal. And probably the most outspoken organization promoting legalization of immorality in this country is ACLU. They have defended pornography, homosexuality, abortion, and drug use. Roger Baldwin, one of the founders of the ACLU, actually was a communist.
Yep.
And they're so popular today.
That's true.
Next goal, infiltrate the churches and replace religion with the social religion. Discredit the Bible. We can see this. I went to the conference a couple weeks ago, and I heard about the pastor who is very popular, and who is writing books after books, and he is the pastor of one of the mega churches, the biggest churches, and he says that there are many ways to reach Christ.
Nope.
To reach God, though, and in his books he doesn't even mention Christ. Tell me if they achieve. This is 62. Next one, eliminate prayer or any phase of religion oppression in the schools, on the ground, that is violate the principle of separation of church and the states. What's happening in the school, we know what's happening. The other one, very interesting though. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders, which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. And we being taught that psychiatrists are the best qualified to understand and to treat criminals, alcoholics, addicts, and so on. They're the one who is going to help our kids. They're the one who understand the child abuse, and actually parents don't have rights today. To discipline their kids because everything is child abuse. Discredit the family as an institution. And I have to tell you, I cannot even imagine what's going on in the churches, because the world is the world, right? And we cannot judge them because we don't live according to the same rules, according to the same values. But what is going on in the churches, what is going on in the schools, all of the relationships, sexual relationships before marriage are okay. The parents have no problem, rights. Poor kids, it's always their right. It's always something that they're hurt. It's always something that, we have to. And then what generation is growing up in this country? What generation, how they will handle the future? I have no idea. I mean, we have to pray, and this is my prayer every day. I'm telling my students that they're keeping me so close to God. Because I have to pray for them every single thing. But for example, for so many years, this year I have so many kids who are going to meet the consultants because they cannot, they're not trained to self-control, they don't know how to behave. That's why they have to go, and I just guess the money that parents are paying for someone to consult them and to help them, and so on and so on. But the thing is, we can say that the communism and socialism are the evil twins that Satan can use to accomplish his purpose, that being to stop the progress of the gospel. The preaching of Jesus is not allowed in such places, and unfortunately, it wasn't allowed in this country too. We all know all of the cases, for people who didn't want to be. And then why Satan is the one? Because this world belongs to him. Jesus himself talked about it in John chapter 8, and he's saying this: you don't understand what I say, it is because you cannot bear to hear my word. You're of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. He lies, he speaks out of his own character. In some translation, New International said, his own native language. For he is the liar and the father of lies. And he's the deceiver. He is the murderer from the beginning. And he has his ultimate agenda to destroy human life. Marriages, relationships, family, friendship, kids, through deception. His agenda never changes, but he is limited only to deception, to twisting the truth. And this is what we see today, the twisting the truth. It is John chapter 8, verses 43 and 44. He is doing the truth, confusing human mind, that we think that it's right is actually wrong. And you and I live in the world and planet, in this globe, that this has given, unfortunately, to Satan. But he doesn't have all the power. He is limited. And this is our role, to be and to stand for the truth, to pray and to stand for God. Because what they wanted actually is to eliminate, it is to destroy our life. And the murderer, we have to understand how murderer communism has been. Normally, when we think of the murderous regime of the 20th century, we think of Hitler and the Nazis, right? Right. And the murder of the 6 million Jews. But we don't mention
Russia.
that his party was the National Socialist
Democrat.
Yes, party. The same root, the same. And as terrible as this was, 6 million in the small number, comparing with the victims of the communism, totaling amount 100 million. You know, like 20 million in Russia, 65 million in China, million in Vietnam, 2 million in North Korea, 2 million in Cambodia, 1 million in Eastern Europe, 1.5 million in Africa, 1.5 million in Afghanistan. And as I said, we have to understand and we have to teach kids what is the difference. I was reading so many things before this morning, and when you have time, you can go and read Martin Luther King Jr. Sermon from 1953, talking about how the communist cannot be a Christian and Christian cannot be a communist. Really, really impressive. And let's go very quick in the crash, very short crash history course. First, communism denies the existence of God. Atheism is the very heart of the communism. The word atheism comes from the two Greek words, a, meaning no, and theos means God. And the atheist, therefore, is one who says there is no God. He denies the very existence of God. According to Psalm 14 verse 1, another word that describes the atheist is fool. The denial of the existence of God is the foundation upon which the entire philosophy of communism is based. Khrushchev, if you remember this name, the former Russian premier, frequently asked on television and radio whether Soviet cosmonaut, astronaut, has seen God in their space flights around the Earth. When they definitely replied that they had not, Khrushchev would turn to the audience and say something like this: "There is our proof, there is no God. Our spacemen never saw God." Of course, if they had really wanted to see God, they could have easily done so. They could have simply jumped out of their spacecraft without any spacesuits or oxygen supplies, and in a matter of moments, they will have seen their Creator.
Yeah, or down below.
And the Bible not only affirms the existence of God, but we have evidences. We have evidences, and the existence of God is from the beginning. The Bible, from the first verse in Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And then in Hebrew 11:6 we read, without faith it's impossible to please God. We must believe that He is, and that He is the rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. And obviously not all the person who are atheists and believe in the atheism, they're communists, but all of the communists are atheists. The next one, the communism is based upon the theory of evolution. They love evolution. You can read, I had so many things, so many articles to read about them, and then the Communist Manifesto. I can't believe that I'm doing that in America 30 years later, but yes. And for them, the evolution is simply this, from go to zoo and to you. But it was really it's really important for them. It is the base of all of their theory. And today what we're seeing in our schools is the same thing. Kids are learning only evolution. They're promoting evolution, and all of the teachers and in university and colleges, they believe only in evolution. I don't know if believe, but they definitely are teaching only evolution. Our kids, they don't, because now in the Christian schools it's different. We're teaching evolution in the way like, okay, it's another theory, right? But they know that God created, and there is no evolution. And then cannot be the whole idea of this beast that we're from. And or we know from the Bible that life comes from life, not from something that is dead or don't exist. And then the connection between the humans and the animals, like no animals can read or write abstract symbols. They cannot communicate messages or perform mathematical calculations. They cannot invent, they cannot use fire to train animals, and so on and so on. And we know that that this theory is, actually in the end even Darwin said that that's not true.
Yeah.
The next thing is the communism teaches that matter is eternal. Since they deny God, the communists also deny that there is a creator. If nothing has ever been created, then matter must be eternal. This is the materialistic philosophy that is totally contrary to reality and the truth. Materialism is a dangerous, deceitful, dismal, deadly, and dumb philosophy. Man is made up of blood, bones, brain, etc. He is just a body and nothing else. According to this philosophy, there is no soul, no spirit, no immaterial part of man. Everything is material, physical and chemical. Everything is matter, and matter is everything. Man is nothing more than a bundle of atoms and collection of molecules. And then if the communism is true, then there is no purpose for my life, for my existence. There is no real reason or purpose, so why I'm here? My life is like the meaningless as the water molecule floating around the Atlantic Ocean, right? And we know the teaching of the Bible that God exists. And in John 4:24 says, God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship Him in spirit and truth. And we know, and a couple weeks later, we're going to celebrate the resurrection of our Savior. And we know that this is not the end. The time when we're just passing from this earth to heaven.
Yeah.
But it's going to be only for the people who are believing. Immorality. The communism was absolutely immoral. And I'm just very quick going to quote Lenin, who said, to lie, is that wrong? Not for the good cause. To steal, is that wrong? Not for the good cause. To kill, is that wrong? Not for the good cause. Promises are like a pie crust, made to be broken. And then he said, yes, of course, we're violating the treaty. We have violated the treaty 30 or 40 times. And Stalin said, sincere diplomacy is no more possible than dry water or iron ore. It was absolutely immoral. You know, we don't have time to talk about this, but even families, they destroy families. They destroyed families in the way, you know, to put wife against husband, to kids against parents. Terrible, terrible times. And we know that from the Bible, that man is free moral agent with the power to choose. And we're going to talk a little bit more about choices and morality in a little bit. The family, let me see. In the Communist Manifesto, the abolition of the family, even the most radical, flare up at the infamous proposal of the communists. The bourgeois family will vanish in a matter of course. And this is what they did. I'll tell you a little bit more when I share with you, my own testimony. Marriages, you know, like everything was absolutely discredited, you know. And they were taking over the countries, and the government, the communist government, actually decided for people where they're going to work, where they're going to live, where they're going, not where they're going to marry, but in some cases too, you know, where they're moving or not. Children, the children, they wanted them to be raised not by families, but like by organizations that will be sure that they will grow up in the sense, in the ideas with the communists, and they will become a communist one day. The prosecution. We can stay here like hours to tell you about the prosecution during the communist time. Because most of you who grew up here, you know, USA, you have a little idea what it's like to live without freedom and under the threat of prosecutions. You could just easily have been born among the more than 1 billion people under the communist oppression of those under some other evil system. And I read 215 million Christians today are actually exposed to the extreme prosecution. Not only, of course, in the communist countries, but a lot there. You know, prosecutions are just. But I have to say that I like the church better during the prosecution. When church was underground, you know, like I like the church better. Because when you live under the prosecution, your faith is much more stronger.
Amen.
And you don't think so much about the material things, you know, like churches today a little bit, you know, like I don't like. I don't like this. Materialism is a very dangerous thing, very, very dangerous thing. And the last thing about the earthly paradise for them. The communism is making every effort to create the ideal community and the perfect society. When the entire world is ruled by the communism, then the paradise will have arrived and the earth will be truly blessed. So they think. They feel that the man himself can bring in this kingdom age, that they call this the kingdom age. Marx thought that once the material needs of men were satisfied, greed, profit-taking and hate will disappear. The state will go away. There will be no laws and no need for the police force. A heaven on earth will result. Man's nature will be magically transformed. Each would work according to his ability. Each would desire to receive only according to his needs. The communists have the slogan which says, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. I grew up with this. And let me read this story for you. There is a nice dream, but totally unrealistic and contrary to the basic nature of man. There was once a college professor who taught a class filled with students who were pro-communist. One day, instead of continuing their hating arguments, the professor said, I want everybody to write an essay. I will assign the topic, which is this, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. The students were pleased with this topic because this is the classic position of socialism. According to socialism, everybody works and puts into the common storehouse what he produces and then draws out only what he needs. The students went to their homework and then they turned them in. One young girl in the class had done an exceptionally fine job. She researched the topic, footnoted it, documented it, and typed it up beautifully. The professor took the papers home, read through all them all, and gave her a C+. When she saw her grade, she was furious. She rushed up and demanded to know why she had a C+. After all, she said, this is my favorite topic. I did a great deal to work on this paper, and I was sure I would receive a better grade. The professor smiled and suggested that she calm down just a minute. Then he explained. He said, you know that fellow who sits over there by the window? I think he plays football. He didn't really do very well on this paper. In fact, he earned an F. So what I did was take some of your credits and I gave to you, for both of you, C+. You know, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Do you think that this pleased her?
No.
People said that the socialism is, it sounds good in the paper,
Yep.
or the theory, but the implementing or the real, in the world it was different. I don't think even the theory is good, but this is probably an effect of the life that I had over there. And they want to establish their kingdom, but we better know who is going to establish his kingdom when it's his time. And we know that again, the whole thing that they have is a destruction. And one very good explanation of socialism is like, do you know what will happen if the communist country wants to establish republic in the middle of the Sahara Desert? Within 3 years, they have to import sands. This is what they did. This is exactly what they did. Exactly what they did. And let me tell now a little bit about my story and about my family. I was raised in the, I told you first that Bulgaria 98% are Orthodox. You can, some of them after the end of the, officially end of the communism, call themselves Orthodox atheists, which is ridiculous, but it's more traditionally. Many, many years ago, actually 6 generations before me, one of my great 6 times grandfather, during the Ottoman Empire, he was a tax collector in the place where we live. And you know how the Bible described the tax collectors. You know there are 2 categories, sinners and tax collectors. They are not even in the category of sinners, you know, tax collectors. And he collected the money for the authority, you know, for the Turks. And unfortunately that night, actually fortunately that night, they didn't come. He went to the bar, he got drunk, he fell asleep on the table, and people took all the money. He woke up and he realized that Turks are going to kill him. And he fled to Thessaloniki, which in that period of time, the same country. And in Thessaloniki, he met American missionaries. And he became a Christian. And with them, he got back to Bulgaria. They started the first evangelical churches. I mean, not the first, but evangelical churches. And since then, since the beginning of the Protestant evangelical movement in Bulgaria, my own family is very involved. My grandfather, this is from my father's side. My grandfather, he graduated from the American college, and different than my uncles and relatives, he didn't actually become a pastor, but he decided to go to the military school. And after that, he was extremely nice person of his word. If he say no, that it's no. If he say yes, it's yes. And he became a director of the prisons, political prisons, before the communists. They, in one place, they built a new prison, and he was the first one who put the Bibles in the cells. He said, if you want, read them. If you don't want, don't read them, but don't destroy them. And then he went to the front during the World War II, and when he came back, the Soviets occupied the country. And they sent him to the prison. He was with the 2 death sentences. He was in the prison for around 10 years, 3 of them in the concentration labor camp. He survived all of this. And talking about the families, it wasn't enough for the communists. They took all of our properties, all of the money. My father in that time was 9, 10 years old. My auntie probably 12. And they sent them far away from my grandma. She didn't have money to travel to see her kids. They didn't have money to travel to see their mom. 4 years. Of course, they closed the churches, and it was a very, very difficult time. But when you're talking about the stories of our lives, I wanted to think this morning about your life. Because every decision that we make, the decision that some people make, affects the whole history. You know, what if Adam didn't, you can continue. What if Abraham had more patience? What if David? And, we can continue with this. But day after day, we're writing the story of our own life. Decision after decision, we are writing our story, like episode, chapters, and so on. And I'll tell you what happened with my father in a little bit, but I want to share with you a story, very famous story from the Old Testament. And this is the story of Joseph. I believe everybody are familiar with Joseph. He's the one who wrestled with all of these decisions that he had to make. And he was one of the 11 of 12 sons. His father was Jacob. Jacob's father was Isaac. and Isaac's father was Abraham, if you follow me, you know, the line. And his brothers didn't like him, and he betrayed him, and they sent him, they actually first wanted to kill him, and after that, they decided with all the mercy that they're not going to kill him, but they're going to sell him. And so we see Joseph in Egypt, and the Potiphar, who was he was the chief of the guard, he bought him. And of course, Joseph wanted to write a good story of his life, and he didn't want to compromise. So my father, he didn't want to compromise. Whatever they offered him, whatever they asked him. He was 6 months in a cell by himself, in the dark cell, but waiting for the death sentence. Every single night, he said, every single night when they went there and took him for a walk by himself, he was thinking that they're going to kill him, because he had a process, you know, and then they sent him, you know, to the prison. But thousands of people died without any sentence. And they told him, God provided and God didn't let him die. They told him that the only thing that he can ask from them is a cigarette. And he said, I don't want anything from you. And this is how he quit smoking, waiting 6 months in this cell for his death, praying and believing that God has something for him. Then, like the Joseph's life, temptations are coming all the time. They ask him with the Potiphar's wife, you know the story, and Joseph said, no, I'm not going to do anything against God. I'm not going to compromise. Same thing happened to my grandfather, of course not in the form of the women and not of this kind of temptation, but temptation not to do the good work, temptation to compromise his faith. And he said no, and no, and no, and they sent him from prison to prison. And in one of the places, he got the favor, you know, because he worked really good. He was really good person, and they, you know, people, even they don't believe in Christ, they can recognize who is Christian and who is not. And they gave him responsibility to be over some of the prisoners, and he had, you know, like this position during the darkest time. And one thing in the Joseph story was like, you can read, and God was with him. And I'm like, how God was with him? You know, if God was with Joseph, he will not let his brother to betray him in the first place, right? If God was with my grandfather, he will not let things to happen to him. But God's plans is bigger than our plans, and his ways are different than our ways. And praise the Lord for that. And what happened next is he worked, I don't know, 2 days for one, something, and actually they let him out of the prison a little bit earlier than he was supposed to. He was with the 2 death sentences, then to life sentence, and then 20 years, and so on. And when he got out, they asked him to work for them, and he said, no, I'm not going to work for the communists. And he didn't work even 1 second, which caused, on the other hand, you know, like my grandma, you know, such problems. My father and my aunt weren't able to go to school. We were labeled enemy of people. We couldn't travel, we couldn't have the same thing like the normal people had. But then, he wasn't a prime minister like Joseph, but one day the communism fell in 1989. And he was so pleased, and I'm so pleased that God kept him alive during this time. He was able to vote in the first free elections, because during the communist time, you cannot vote for whoever you want. You have one candidate and you have to vote. And then for us as an enemy of people, we didn't have the right to even to vote. Nothing, you know. Praise the Lord for that, by the way. And it's happened that next to us lived the director of the police. Very cruel person, very, very cruel, violent person. He didn't have anything with us to deal with our case, you know, with my grandfather's thing. But in the end, they both, two different, extreme different people, they spent, I would say, daily time together, talking over a cup of coffee or something, you know. And I think this communist admire my grandfather, for the fact that he never compromised his faith. He always carried the Bible on his table, openly, because, you know, during the communist time, if they know that you have the Bible, they'll send you to prison, and you're finished. You know, like even if his Bible was, he was listening the Voice of America and Free Europe, some illegal radio programs and so on. And if I can say in the end that the headline of my grandfather's life will be that he never compromised. He was faithful to God. It's true, but I'll say forgiveness. Because in the end of his life, he didn't forget what happened. He didn't. I mean, how can you? All of the tortures, all of the, you know, the things that he went through. But he forgave. He forgave them, and then he was able to make a peace with them and with God. I never heard that he was met with God, by the way. He always knew that one day this is going to end. This is how I remember him. And it's for all of us. It was difficult for me to understand that forgiveness is different than I'll forget what happened, you know, like, and that the person is supposed to come and apologize to me first or something. No, forgiveness is in our heart. And this is his story. The story of forgiveness, the story of not compromising, and the story of someone who was faithful to God. And God was faithful to him. And I believe that he rejoiced now in heaven. Amen. Yes.
I know we've run a little long, but anybody have any questions for Blaga before we close today? Because you know what we see going on in this country. You know, we're not seeing that kind of oppression yet, but right and left people are losing jobs. People are being shut down. Businesses for taking any kind of a Christian stand. We're just watching this nation. We're watching it come on us more and more. Socialism, communism, atheism. Tom?
I have a two-part question. When you lived in Bulgaria, or any, to the best of your knowledge, any other communist country, were the citizens or the subjects, any of them own a gun?
No. No.
And my second part to the question is, if they had one, do you think communism would have held up as long as it did?
I like the Second Amendment, though. What I think is so sad, by the way. I think that, especially for the Bulgarians, because Hungarians were different. Czechs were different. They had their revolutions in the 50s, 60s, you know. We never. We were the best and the first friend of Russia, of Soviet Union. And after the changes, my husband and I had so many hopes that things will happen, you know, things will be changed and different. But I'll say that communism is mentality. It's more the way how they think. It's more the way how they behave, because somebody is look after them, you know. Like the same thing